Alrighty, so hello everybody that's tuning in to watch. So it's October now, and I was trying to think of something scary that we could talk about. And at this time, I'm not comfortable really talking about my experiences with ghosts or demons, any experiences that I have with the Fae. I'm not comfortable talking about it just yet, but it might come up, so look forward to that. If you do, or if you're into that kind of thing. I'm just not feeling too comfortable about talking about that just yet. So I'm gonna hold on to those stories for now. And I thought I would talk about something else that's really scary, which was my very first apartment that I lived in all by myself. Oh man, that was a very scary place to live. But before I get into that, I just wanted to quickly talk about the structure of these upcoming videos that I'm going to be making. When I make artwork, traditionally what I do is I draw it out on regular old scratch paper or sketching paper. Then once I have the composition completely laid out, I'll transfer it through a light pad onto a more sturdy piece of paper, a heavier weight piece of paper, usually around 100 pounds or so, 100 pound paper versus like the 60 pound paper that I used to sketch on. And that is just so that when I go into ink and when I go into color, the paper is going to last a lot longer over time and won't bend and crumple like it would if I was going to ink or color on the 60 pound paper. So I would usually go into the sketch paper and then go on to the harder paper after transferring it and then ink the pencil lines and fill in the black spaces, the black spotting, and then add color and then go back over again with the ink because the colored pencil colors over the ink lines and makes them really messy. And so I have to ink it again so that those lines become sharper and pop out again. And that's pretty much the steps that I always take whenever I make work. And I've made work like this for about, oh my gosh, what, 13 years? It's been a long time. This is the process that I use, and I'm very comfortable and very happy with it. And maybe in the future I'll change it up, but for now I'm pretty happy with it and have been happy with it. But for the future videos on this channel, whenever I show artwork, I'm not going to be showing the pencil stages. I'm not going to be showing the sketching stages on the sketch paper, nor will I be showing the transferring. The transferring because the camera and the light pad, the light just doesn't work very well with the camera, and the color is very difficult and it's kind of just really messy, so I'm not going to be showing that. And then as far as sketching on the sketch paper goes, I'm not going to be showing that either because when I am sketching, it's a very personal experience. It's when I do most of the, what I would call talking with the drawing. It's when I am most connected with the drawing, and it is a very personal experience that I feel is a little bit too intimate to be capturing on camera. So in the future, I'll be showing the first ink, the color, and then the final ink, and then the final piece. And I just feel the most comfortable with that. So, you know, maybe there'll be specials in the future where I show the actual sketching process, but I'm going to be taking the sketching and the transferring process out just because it feels very uncomfortable for me to be filming those stages. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that in, quickly throw that out, just so that if people notice it, were like, hey, why aren't we seeing pencils? It's intentional. Anyway, my first apartment. Oh my gosh. What a nightmare. So, like I said, I can't really, I don't really feel comfortable explaining scary things right now that I've experienced, but my first apartment was pretty terrifying. It wasn't haunted or anything like that, although that would have been a really great story. No, it was just a dump. When I was a sophomore in college, I moved out of the dorms. Or no, it wasn't a sophomore, it was junior, I think. Oh man, was it a junior? 2014, I think? Yeah, I think I was a junior in college. And I moved out of the dorms at the school to an apartment building that was, I think, 2, maybe 3 blocks away from the school. It was pretty close. And it was $800 a month, which was a lot for me. And, you know, now housing prices are ridiculously dumb, where, you know, a studio is $1,300 a month. But this place was a 1-bedroom, and it was a building from the early 1900s. It was kind of old, kind of older building. To help cover that, I worked at the school as a tutor, specifically working with Chinese foreign exchange students as well as master's students on their thesis papers, and worked with other students concerning Adobe software programs and many other students with their writing. It wasn't a bad job, it was actually pretty cool. And I also worked part-time as a flex worker for Macy's in downtown Minneapolis. That store was like the main store. It had like 8-9 floors, and like the 8th floor was supposedly a floor that had a pool in it, and like the Macy's family or the Bloomington family or whatever it was, they lived there. At one point, it's nuts. Anyway, so I worked as a flex worker for them, where I would go in at 5 a.m. and I would tag clothes and scan clothes to racks for like clearance and sales and shit. And it was a pretty shitty job, and I can make a whole video just on working for Macy's, and I totally will. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about my first apartment I lived with all by myself. And this apartment, being from the early 1900s, the floors fell. They were slanted, and they were slanted at such a range that if I were to pick up my feet from my rolling computer chair, I would roll from one side of the room to the other side of the room. That's how bad the slant was. And you know, wood floors, everything was wooden. I had a gas oven stove that didn't work. I couldn't bake anything for an entire year. It sucked. There was actually a time when I came home from school after being up at 5 a.m. tagging clothes for clearance at Macy's, and then went to school right afterwards on the Minneapolis bus system. I came home and my entire apartment smelled like gas. And I called maintenance, and I had 2 hours before I had to go back to school for a studio class, which was 5 hours long. The whole apartment smelled like gas. So I called maintenance and I told them what was up, and then after the 5-hour class I came back home and the apartment still smelled like gas, and I had to open up all the windows. Luckily, I think it was springtime, so it wasn't like, you know, negative 20 degrees outside, which it is in Minneapolis in the winter for 6 months. Anyway, and the guy, I'm just gonna drop his name because he was so terrible. His name was Mike. Mike left me a refrigerator light bulb and a Post-it note that said, "Couldn't find pilot light, here's a light bulb to plug it into in your oven." Because the pilot light in my oven had blown out and gas was just leaking. So he gave me a refrigerator light bulb to put in my gas oven to fix the pilot light. And I called the state, and they came and they fixed it, and Mike got fired. I shouldn't laugh. I still feel bad about getting that man fired. But anyways, so that was the gas oven. When I first moved in, there was I think it was a ceiling fan in the dining room, and I remember moving something underneath it and then getting this feeling that I should move. I needed to move like 3 feet to the left, and I remember moving 3 feet to the left, not thinking too much about it, and the bulb cover for the ceiling fan fell down and crashed in the middle of the floor. And that was really terrifying because I was right underneath it, and if I hadn't moved right then, it would have landed on my head. So I guess maybe that's some paranormal ghostly ghouly thing. Woo! Yeah, that was terrifying. Let's see, another thing that happened. I got mice. Got mice because of course I got mice. I wasn't dirty or anything, they just existed. And I remember at my desk and seeing 1 or 2 mice just crawl underneath my desk, and oh my gosh, that was just so terrible. And I called maintenance and they came over with glue traps. And I don't know if anybody here has used glue traps before, but basically what they are is they're a flat cardboard thing that has glue on it, and you fold up the sides and it makes like a pyramid shape, but like a tube. I don't know if I'm probably describing it really wrong, but a pyramid tube-like shape thing. And there was glue on the bottom, and you put it along the corners of rooms or along the walls where the mice would run. Then the mice would get stuck in the glue and then starve to death, basically. And I had never like used a glue trap or like have ever needed to use a glue trap. I wasn't sure what they were. And I got a mouse in a glue trap once, and I called maintenance and I was like, I don't know what to do with this. What do I do? And they sent a guy over, and oh my gosh, what he did was so horrible. He pulled the glue trap away from the wall, and I'm sorry, this is really gross. Skip forward a minute or two. He stomped his foot on top of the glue trap and crushed the mouse to death. And there was blood and there was bone cracking. Oh my gosh, it was so disgusting. After that, I got rid of all the glue traps and I just got snap traps because I couldn't afford traps that would just capture them, like the spin lock traps that then you took outside and you opened it up and you let them go. I couldn't afford those, so I had to get snap traps. And I only ever caught one. And it was so horrifying because I had, you know, it's a dead mouse and you had to pick it up and it was so gross and I felt so bad about it. Luckily I moved out a month later so I didn't have to deal with it, but oh my gosh, it was so horrible. I feel like I'm talking really fast. Sorry if I am. I'm trying to get in all the stuff that happened at this place all in one go. And I know this video is only 18 minutes, so I'm trying to like stuff it all in all at once. In this apartment, there was also a sunroom. Where I live now, sunrooms and 4-season porches or 3-season porches aren't very common. So I'll just quickly describe what it is, just in case nobody knows. But it's basically a room where you can go for like 3 months out of the year and there's windows all around, you can see outside, and it's like being outside but behind glass, basically. Or like a sunroom is like a room that gets a whole bunch of sun during the daytime, it has a whole bunch of windows, and then that's that. And this apartment had a sunroom, which was really awesome. I had all my plants in there and I had a whole bunch of plants. Oh my goodness. I had Mr. Fitzgerald at that time. I think he was like he was like 6 feet long at that point. He was getting unmanageable, and I had other plants there too. Unfortunately, it was a north-facing window, so it really wasn't a sunroom, and unfortunately it also faced a main road. So when I opened up the windows, there would just be cars and people walking by all the time, and I always felt so super uncomfortable. So I would open up the windows and then shut the door, and I wouldn't hang out in there because people would look in, and it was always just it was terrible. The previous owner had used that room for like the litter box for their cat, and it was so creepy because I would always hear scratching on the walls from that room when the door was closed, and I'd open up and I'd look and there wouldn't be any mice or any rats or anything, and the scratching would stop, and then I'd close the room and the scratching would start up again. And I always looked for all these mice. I looked for like droppings and like fur, and there was just nothing, and I never caught any mice in there or rats in there. But there was this one wall that had a whole bunch of claw marks on it, so I don't know, maybe the previous owner's cat's spirit was there still scratching on the wall. I don't know. Man, this apartment was such crap, and it was so overpriced. The bedroom, I basically had to stop using the bedroom because there was just so many mice in there, and I had to like stop using the mattress because the mice would get into the mattress. I basically slept on my couch in the living room every night. It was so bad and it was so frustrating, but at the same time I still like super miss that apartment. Like I miss the independence and I miss the freedom of that apartment so much. You know, there was no AC. I had to put fans in the windows and put sheets that were wet on top of the fans to cool down the apartment, and the windows slid upwards and they wouldn't stay, and you had to put sticks in them to keep the windows up. And I think the funniest thing that actually happened was that the floor fell through in the bedroom. I was living on the first floor, the basement floor, which was so freaking creepy. So creepy. Oh my gosh. You would always hear sounds and noises, and the floor was unfinished, so it would just be like a dirt floor and the walls were crumbling. But my apartment was right above the laundry room, and like I mentioned before, the floors were really sloped and falling down because it was such an old place and it was settling. And I had some floorboards that had some nuts in them, and I was washing the floor, and then the nuts and the floorboards fell through into the laundry room, and part of a floorboard like broke and fell down into the laundry room. My floor literally broke into the laundry room, and it was the bedroom floor. And I called maintenance and they were like, well, we can't fix it. Do you want a lower rate for your apartment because the floor broke? And I was like, the fuck? My apartment floor, my bedroom broke, and you just want to lower my rent? I mean, yes, I'll take it, but still, like, what do I do? And they did nothing. And so the light from the basement that never turned off would just shine through my bedroom floor because there was a freaking hole in it. And that and the mice was why I just gave up on the bedroom completely. But it was Oh my gosh, it was so funny. It was so weird. I tried everything. Like I put a mat over it and then the mat would always move. I tried duct taping over the hole, but the light would still get through. It was just a mess. And so I just stopped using that room entirely. And oh my gosh, that apartment building was such an overpriced mess. I don't even think it's there anymore. I think that they tore it down when I was a senior because of fire codes and stuff. Thinking back, I don't think there was a single fire alarm in that apartment actually. Yeah, there wasn't a single one. Oh my gosh, what a nightmare. But yeah, that was my first and only apartment that I've ever lived in where I didn't have any roommates. Right after that apartment, I moved in with my boyfriend at the time. I moved to a city that was about 30 minutes away from my school. But that time that I lived alone in that apartment, it was just one thing after another. But I really miss the independence of living alone. And I really look forward to a time when I can again live alone, because I'm a person that really likes to live alone. Hopefully my next place isn't as terrifying as that place was, you know, never knowing if the floor was gonna fall through on you or if a mouse was gonna run over your foot or anything. Oh, and the last thing I'll quickly mention, hopefully I can get this into the video. It was 5 blocks from downtown, and so you'd always have sirens and stuff going on. And there was this one evening where my neighbors upstairs got into a huge fight and a gun went off and shot through my ceiling. They shot through my ceiling, and you know, I called the police because, you know, if someone was shooting into my apartment, of course, and the police were already on their way because of a domestic disturbance. I remember them all being hauled downstairs, and the guy that had the gun was like pressed up against my door, and everyone was shouting and the police were asking questions, and I was just looking through my peephole watching this whole thing go down, and oh my gosh, it was so dramatic and so terrifying. Jeez. Oh my gosh. Just thinking about that makes my heart race just now, but my first apartment, living in Minneapolis. I have so many stories about living there and getting to school and just so much stuff that I could talk about. Not enough time here to talk about it, but that was my first ever apartment where I lived alone. And I hope I could get all of it in. Hope I wasn't talking too fast. Yeah, maybe something spooky, more spooky will show up next week. We'll see. All right. Well, in the meantime, stay spooky. Happy October. Happy spooky season. Have yourself some good, safe, but spooky fun. And I will see you again next week. Bye.